Right, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, super intelligent, shades of the colour sky blue, pink, however you identify, we really couldn't give a fuck. My very special guest is Revival Fitness, and we did a very popular video a bit back, which aged well, so we thought, well, we might as well do another one. And we thought we needed someone to, critique while we're at it. All right, finally. So what we thought we'd do is we thought we'd quickly critique Mike Israetel, who is still a fucking imbecile, on his latest discussion with Thomas DeLauer. But there's a few things you wanted to say about that before we kick off.
Yeah, so your comment about Mike has aged very well. In that time, he's attempted to get his bodybuilding pro card once again, got about 5th place or 6th. He's made a number of excuses, which he says are not excuses, but he's blamed the tan. He's mentioned all kind of things, but he swears by this, and he said as much on Instagram recently. It's not his diet that is the problem. He'll probably talk somewhat about his own diet here, but it's very high in sugar. It's extremely high in carbs in general. And he's gone on to since get cosmetic surgery. He's got liposuction and flank fat removal from his sides. And now he's got this big, distended, basketball-looking stomach. And when he cuts back down again, I think he's going to look kind of odd. I mean, we'll see if he can finally get the pro card. Mind you, he's in the Masters division, which is age 35 and up, so it's easier. So it's easier by default. But he hasn't fared well so far. So, maybe he'll prove us wrong, but I guess we'll see.
Yeah, I doubt it. So Mike is one of these characters that purports and puts himself forward as some kind of an expert, and yet clearly doesn't know how to get it together and can't correctly state the first law of thermodynamics, let alone apply it correctly. Thinks calories in, calories out is a valid approach. It's really all you need to know about Mike. But anyway, we'll press play, and anytime you want me to hit pause if I haven't already, just sing out and we'll deal with it. So let's kick off. Mike, tell us all about it.
Carbohydrates pre-workout. Carbohydrates post-workout. No carbohydrates around your workout at all. What is the answer when it comes down to performance versus strength versus mass? Is there an answer?
So the biggest answer is if day over day, any time of the day, you consume enough carbohydrate,
which is still not 1 single gram ever. The human requirement for carbohydrates in the diet is 0 still.
Stored up in your muscle glycogen enough such that anytime you want to train, even if you haven't had carbs yet, and if you don't have carbs right after, it's not a huge deal because the glycogen will be there. It'll power hard training and even start to potentiate some recovery afterwards. So the most important thing is having enough carbohydrate in your diet, period, in any 24-hour cycle. So
right, which is 0 grams per day ever.
The glycogen he's talking about, you don't have to consume carbs to get that, correct?
Correct. Gluconeogenesis is still a thing. You'll still find it in any textbook on metabolism that you could possibly want to look at. It still works perfectly.
It's too It's too stressful on the body, though. I hear that. I don't think Mike has said that. Maybe he will, but I hear that all the time. It's too stressful or something like that. Something about cortisol going up, right?
Right. Well, again, if you want to label cortisol as a stress hormone, that's a value judgment statement. That's a label that you can apply arbitrarily to it. At the end of the day, every hormone that we have in our body exists precisely because a length of DNA exists encoding for its production. And what you need to understand is that you, me, and everybody else, each one of us, is the absolute peak of evolution to this point. Our genes really know what they're doing. And if you are looking for a situation where stress is 0, I can tell you how to achieve it. It's called dead. That's when your stress level is 0. A level of stress is required. In fact, the training response to exercise is a response to stress.
Mm-hmm.
So why would you want to put in all the effort required to stress your body sufficiently to cause it to want to heal itself better than it was before, i.e. the general training adaptation syndrome, and then do everything you possibly can to ameliorate that stress immediately after the exercise? Because it's the stress that's causing the adaptation, for God's sake. It just makes absolutely no logical sense whatsoever to do that. And that's one thing I will say is this, apropos of sort of almost nothing, I guess, but every time a so-called expert opens his or her mouth to start talking about the best way of doing something, I always look at that person visually and I go, is this a person I would trust? Just by looking at them, do they know what they're doing?
Mm-hmm.
It's just a rhetorical question applied to nothing in particular.
Right.
But that's an approach I always take. And anyone that doesn't understand basic concepts like, the first law of thermodynamics or gluconeogenesis as an extant thing, or evolution as an extant thing, whether you like that or not.
Oh, boy.
These are people that we don't need to listen to that don't get that. Right alongside people that believe the earth is flat.
Well, I mean, Mike recently mentioned he had a conversation with an AI bot, and he said it made him cry tears. It was so touching to him.
Right.
So that's what we're dealing with here. But
Right. Okay, good. Right, Mike, more.
Here's what I mean by that. If you have full glycogen restoration chronically at 400 grams of carbs for your body weight and physical activity level, and you time everything perfectly at 100 grams of carbs a day, it doesn't matter. You will have a better result than if you didn't time it perfectly, but you're just going to be a shadow of your former self, performance, recovery-wise, growth-wise, if you're that many grams of carbs shy of 400.
Absolute fucking nonsense, Mike Israetel. Garbage.
Why 400?
Absolute rubbish.
What's he getting?
Well, I guess that's what he's found for himself.
Mm-hmm.
On the basis that, here's the thing, if you base your diet around carbohydrates, that's what your body expects. That's how it's geared. Those are the enzymes that are going to be favored. Suddenly changing your diet, I think I'll knock out the carbohydrates now because this bald guy on the internet tell me I didn't need them.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it is true you don't need the carbohydrates, but you do need time to adapt to the appropriate species-specific diet for a human being. And a full adaptation back to your genetically predisposed diet is 26 plus or minus 6 weeks, not minutes.
Yeah.
Or hours or days.
Since I've mentioned going carnivore, and people get understandably upset. I get comments all the time, and they say, "Oh, even if it's just keto," they say, "Oh, bro, I tried it for 3 days, bro. No energy, workout sucked," and they quit. And I'm like, well, three days. What can you do in 3 days with anything?
Exactly. Your body needs time to adjust. It will optimize. Your performance will rebound back to at least where it was, if not better, on a diet that's devoid of carbohydrates. My statement saying you do not require carbohydrates remains true. Unless you have some need to perform at your current peak based on your current status tomorrow. In which case I would suggest to you, hey, don't knock the carbs out tonight.
Right.
All at once, because that'll mess you up. Your performance won't stand up. Don't suddenly go carnivore without a proper transition overnight and tell me 3 or 4 days later it was shit and it was no good and I couldn't exercise and ergo the diet's wrong. No, you're a fucking idiot.
They did it wrong.
Basically. You did it wrong. You never really were a carnivore and you did it wrong.
That's right.
Yeah. Hand your card in. Or expect a late night visit from Ted.
Oh, man.
Or something like that. Yeah. Right. Okay, cool. Let's rock on.
On the other hand, if you have 400 grams of carbs a day, you don't time a thing. 400 grams of carbs to you, it's just like going to the sushi place late at night and just cramming in 400 grams. One meal of the day. The way glycogen resynthesis works, because such a meal is going to be so slow digesting, you're going to be objectively better off in performance, recovery, and muscle growth than you would be with a perfectly timed 100 grams of carbs, just because it's enough. So first, enough. But let's say we have 2 people. One consumes 400 grams of carbs with one sushi meal at the end of the day, and another person does something else with that same 400. Will that something else be better? Yes.
Well, it depends on what that thing is, doesn't it?
Yeah, I had the same thought.
Yeah, and also him making this absolute unequivocal statement about 400 grams is better than 100 grams and the timing's important. Says who on the basis of what? Did
Mike,
we see? Yeah,
Mike
did we
says
see any
anything.
reference-
He says anything on the basis of whatever he wants all the time. That's his
Right.
deal. Yeah.
Right. Well, like he says, the first law of thermodynamics applies to human metabolism, and calories in, calories out is valid, and stuff like that.
Though that's his justification. I mean, he says people get him. They're like, man, you drink Gatorade and you eat sugary cereals, and he like wraps protein bars in tortillas. I'm not kidding about that. And he'll say,
Wow.
oh, it does. Yeah. For bodybuilding prep, mind you, like to get shredded, which he's never done. Shocker, right? And people comment, listen, have you tried, even if you're going to do a high carb approach, like if you tried just like maybe white rice and chicken, and he's like, my diet has no bearing because if I'm underneath the thermodynamic threshold, I will lose as much fat as possible. So,
yeah. Wow. So, yeah, Mike hasn't got any better, clearly. Right. So he's just made a statement and he hasn't referenced it with anything whatsoever. Okay, great.
We'll see if he does.
Is
but
it okay if I explain what that something else is? The optimal strategy. So that would be consuming some kind of carbohydrates a few hours to a few minutes before the performance.
Completely unnecessary. In fact, if you are properly adapted to a species-appropriate human diet, there is no need to intake any carbohydrates at any time, especially not prior to your exercise. Simple as that, really. Anything to add?
I mean, I could just say for myself, I've done the like carb loading stuff like before a workout or the day before, just like big bowls of cereal, all this stuff, because the expectation is you're going to get massive strength boost. I can say for myself, I never experienced that. What I really did experience was more sluggishness, more fatigue. You're more, I don't want to say exactly cramping, but you're kind of just bogged down. So I tried that a number of times in the past. It never did much for me at all, at least from just a general like weightlifting hypertrophy standpoint.
Yeah. All right. Shocker. Incredible.
Begins. Why a few hours to a few minutes? It really just depends on two things. One, how much carb and protein and fat or whatever you had, so that most of that carbohydrate is starting to leach into the bloodstream from the small intestines by then. You don't want to eat like a Chipotle burrito worth of carbs and then 30 minutes later start training, because it's in just your stomach at that point and nothing's gone to your bloodstream. On the other hand, if you have a Gatorade really quick, driving to train, 30 minutes ago you had a Gatorade, that is well into your bloodstream and you've done the right thing.
No, you haven't done the right thing by drinking a Gatorade. No, you have not.
But Bart, it's rapid digesting carbs. That's optimal, right? It's optimal.
No, it's absolutely not optimal. And I know that you know that, and you're playing devil's advocate.
Of course.
Absolutely not. No. Rapid acting carbohydrates cause a rapid acting insulin spike, which then drags your blood sugar down lower than it was before you took that rapid acting carbohydrate spike. It sets you up to fail, basically. And again, let's take a look, shall we, at the person who's claiming to be an expert here. While he does have some muscle mass, absolutely, would you say that he's been able to optimize his presentation and achieve his goals? Well, we've already covered that, and the answer is no. No, he hasn't. So, frankly, I think a bit of self-awareness from some of these online influencers that say words because they want to a lot.
He loves it. Michael listens to himself talk. I mean, you probably have seen he's on every big podcast, whether it's fitness and health or not. He's all over the place now. He's huge. Yeah.
And literally.
That's right.
When he sits around the house, he really sits around the house, this boy, doesn't he?
Yeah, he does. Give him credit for that. He knows what he's doing, at least, I guess.
Yeah. He's got right. Yeah, right. Okay, good. Let's have some more.
So if it's a large meal with lots of other stuff, lots of carbs, a few hours before training. If it's a smaller meal with faster digesting carbs, less other stuff, closer to training is fine, even 15 or 30 minutes.
So we're begging the question fallacy here that you need to eat a bunch of carbohydrates before you train and again afterwards, which is false. You need to do no such thing, either before or after exercise, in fact.
It's standard bodybuilding, standard protocol. I mean, I don't think you're very active on Instagram in terms of like a lot of the content that's there. It's all over that now. It's like, okay, you have to, what they say now is a lot of like the so-called science-based kids. They're very young. They're like college-age students. And they say this is standard bodybuilding. Eat as low fat as possible. Get your essential, omegas in, right?
Yeah.
Protein roughly 1 gram per pound, and then fill the rest with carbs. Right. And they swear by this, like if you're not eating carbs, you're going to not optimize muscular potential. They even say, I'm sure you've heard this too, right? Fat turns into fat, carbs don't. Have you heard that before?
Yeah, I have heard that. Yeah.
Yeah, I think
It's
Mike is
rubbish.
I think Mike is kind of in that. Yeah, he just says similar stuff, I believe.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolute nonsense, all of it. Basically, this is yet another bloke whose primary concern is how many clicks can Mike Israetel get. Nothing wrong with that, except that the way he gets those clicks is by passing off disinformation, misinformation, demonstrably false so-called facts to an unsuspecting public of largely people who are trying to hypertrophy train for some reason. And he's got himself a niche there somehow that people want to listen to him for some reason. And I, for the life of me, can't understand why.
I think it's major credentials because the PhD carries a lot of weight to, normal people when they see that.
Yeah, some people think that's impressive. I've known a lot of people with PhDs personally, and probably 9 out of 10 of them are fucking imbeciles. Absolute fucking imbeciles.
Oh, the fitness industry's got all kinds of them. You could throw a dart at a board.
Yeah, absolutely. And just because something is standard practice, does that make it correct or optimal?
Right. That's a good question.
Yeah, the answer is, well, no, not necessarily. And then people will say, well, what about all the athletes? Why are they all saying that they're doing this? Why are they all doing this? Why is there nobody jumping up and down from the rooftop saying, I'm a carnivore? Which I can answer very simply. It's this. In a competitive sporting environment, if you have found a way to overcome your opponents and to have an advantage, do you jump up on the rooftops and scream about it?
No, you don't.
No, sir. No, you don't. You keep it to yourself, don't you? And you laugh your tits off at these buffoons like this one telling us we need to eat carbs, and it's all about the calories, though, and stuff.
I mean, Mike is interesting. I mean, he's tried his same strategy for years now. Like, at the very least, out of sheer curiosity, would you not try keto or carnivore just not one time, just once,
If I was in Mike's position in terms of physique, composition, the way it's coming together or not, patently for him, given that he's been doing the same thing you tell me, and I'll believe you, for many years, to me that would be a surefire sign that what he's been doing for years is not optimal, is not working for him, and he absolutely should do something different, yes. Of course, the problem with most of these characters is this. It's something that my grandmother used to say to me, and my mother in turn used to say to me as well, and probably still does actually, behind my back. And it's this. Son, you have 2 eyes, 2 ears, and 1 mouth. That is the proportion in which they ought to be used. While ever you're spouting off about how much you know, you're not learning a damn thing. And if you're not using the eyes, i.e. look in the mirror, sunshine, is this working for you?
My grandma, she used to say hard head, soft ass. That was what she said to me. So kind of similar. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess. Yep. All right, let's crack on.
Before, that pre-workout meal can keep your glycogen topped off just well enough, and especially can keep your blood glucose level a little higher than normal. Blood glucose level is a big potentiator for performance. You have enough blood glucose.
If your body is typically, used to carbohydrates and relies upon them, sure. If you're properly adapted to a fat-based diet, a fat and protein-based diet, you still have perfectly sufficient blood glucose and muscle glycogen for your exercise. It's still a begging the question fallacy here from Mike Israetel. You still don't need any carbohydrates at all once you are properly adapted.
You have low blood glucose, you're going to get stopped dead in your tracks. You're going to hit.
That's what's going to happen if you change your diet suddenly overnight and drop out all the carbs as a carb athlete without doing a proper transition. Yes, you'll bonk. Yes, you'll fail. We've covered that already. Absolutely.
hit a wall. So pre-workout meal, recommend it. Again, none of these are ultra important compared to eating enough carbohydrate throughout the day, but it
Still not 1 single gram ever.
matters by a small fraction. If someone's like, hey, the most important soccer match of my life coming up in an hour, should I just not eat anything? I'm going to be like, you should probably get some Nutri-Grain bar or something. The other factor for choosing that time is how you personally handle food in your stomach when you're training hard. Do you know any people that get like pretty vomity if they get nervous for a big workout and they've eaten?
For sure. Yeah.
Some people, they just need to stay away from food before they go train. Luckily, that intramuscular glycogen from the days eating before, from a meal 6 hours ago, that's still going to do most of the work. You'll be fine. But ideally, if you could have some food or some carbs, that'd be great. Maybe liquids are better for those people. But if you get really vomity, don't have that whole pre-workout carb situation. Don't over-index on it, because then you'll just throw up and it'll be a bad time. But some people can have pretty side.
So,
go on.
speaking of vomiting, Mike has been caught doing this. He doesn't train very intensely. He trains to, it's debated, but you would say many reps in reserve, that concept. What he likes to do during his leg days, he will coincidentally set up his phone somewhere and then film himself vomiting. And then he'll say, oh, this was such an intense leg day. And then you see the footage and, you know, the weight's not really slowing down at all. So it's like, you know, how intense is it really if that's happening?
Here's the thing. If you're doing something that is causing you to vomit, what does that tell you about the appropriateness of eating the food before doing that thing?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Mike's kind of saying that. He's kind of saying, stay away from eating food if you're one of these people that gets vomity. Fine. But he's still begging the question, fallacy, by then still assuming that it's still optimal, if you possibly can, to pour some carbohydrates down your stupid fucking neck.
Any opening you can get, it's just more, more carbs, no matter any chance you get. Oh, drink this, eat that,
It's just ridiculous. Anyway.
Sizable meal an hour before they train, and then they feel great through training. So pre-workout meal, number 1. Number 2 is a post-workout meal. You're replenishing glycogen stores and putting your body back into a healing, recovering parasympathetic state.
Okay, so as I said before, the whole point of the exercise is to stress your body and cause it to need to repair itself better than it was before, so that next time you do that to yourself, it's not such the same level of distress on your body. So going through all that effort, putting in all of that work to do the training, and then immediately calming, quashing, and sorting out the result of that, fucking inane. Absolutely fucking inane. The most ridiculous thing I've heard this week.
There's a lot more video, Bart. I'm sure we'll get to something worse.
I'm sure. Anyway, we better get on with it because we've not got a lot of time left today, unfortunately. Let's go.
Having a lot of protein and carbs after training, those muscles that were active during the training are more sensitive to the reuptake and reassimilation of glucose from the food in the few hours after they've trained than they are later in the day. So if you have more of your carbohydrates after training than just dispersed through the day, you have some small but notable amount more of that fuel going to replenish your muscles so that you're chronically better the next day. And
well, training shouldn't be an everyday thing anyway. You should train a maximum of 3 or 4 times a week. In other words, every other day maximum, not every day. And unless you are an advanced hypertrophy athlete, you don't need any splits whatsoever. You do a whole body split every single time, and then you rest. The whole point of the exercise is to recover, and recovery only happens when you rest.
I've been on here for many years now. I tell guys most guys spend way too much time in the gym, and a lot of them are young, so they have nothing else to do, right? So they're going to naturally go there, but they'll be plateaued and stuck. And I'm like, hey, how about even if you go from 6 days a week, even if you just go to 5, you'll see some benefits. Oftentimes I get guys, I call it a push-pull legs bra, 6 days a week. I get them on 3-day full body splits, something similar, even if it's a 4-day, just much more spaced out, drop the volume down. They will smash plateaus.
Yes.
I've seen it for years, constantly.
Yeah. Exercise, training, and response is all about intensity. It is not about volume. Volume is not your friend. Volume.
Oh boy, here we go.
to increase your volume, you necessarily have to reduce your intensity.
That's right.
Okay?
Mm-hmm.
Ergo, the distress of the training is reduced in favor instead of this other thing, which is just chronic fatigue. Why do you think training response plateaus? It's because people are overdoing the volume.
That's right. Yeah, and they can't properly recover. But in the moment, Mike, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, he still uses the concept of the pump as like a major factor. I could be wrong on that, so I don't want to say for sure. But I know in the past he's talked about it. And it's like, okay, yeah, the pump is good. It's like if you feel your biceps working, that's good. But the pump in itself, I could sit here and squeeze for 5 minutes to get a pump. You know what I mean? So you can do anything over and over. No, but you said it perfectly. You can do all kinds of sets if you're leaving a bunch of reps in the tank and if you're not exerting yourself hard. And then you have more excuse to be in the gym all day.
Right. Yeah, it's just daft. Absolutely daft. The only people that need to do volume are people that are involved in volume sports, endurance sports.
Right.
What I say to those people is what you need to do actually is rethink your sporting participation.
Yeah.
Because it's not good for you long term at all. That's not how human beings are designed. That's not a good thing. That's not something to be lauded or proud of. That's going to do you harm. Stay away from that. Right, we better crack on because, yeah, as I said, I'm a bit limited today on time. So let's just see where it goes.
There's probably some sort of anabolic effect there. Quickly replenishing glycogen. Your body
Okay, are you going to reference that with anything? No. No reference to that at all? Okay, great.
It's how much glycogen it has in the muscles and will titrate how much anabolism it allows the muscles to engage in. How much muscle growth is stimulated is dependent in some sense on how much glycogen you have filled out. So if you have a great workout, you go home and you do nothing for 3 hours, no food, man, your body's going to be like, yeah, we'll grow some muscle from this, but not as much as we would have if you had a nice big carb meal with protein right after training. So
no reference again.
Never does.
Interesting.
We're bookending our training. Pre-workout meal, post-workout meal. Pre-workout 1 to 3 hours before, depending on how digestion and stuff goes. Post-workout meal, really just like as soon as possible. Now, look, if you wait 30 minutes or 45 minutes driving home after the gym before you eat carbs again and protein, it's not a big deal.
So nothing but opinions. Good.
But if you can have a shake right after, that's a good deal. It's starting to do something. The last thing, or second to last thing, is intra-workout carbohydrate.
Oh, God. Not only do we have to take in piles of carbs beforehand and afterwards, but during as well?
Well, if I can jump in on Mike's behalf here, I don't know for sure if he does this. I would bet money that he does. Given the size he is, what a lot of the biggest bodybuilders do is they take insulin before they train, oftentimes before every meal. So they take the rapid-acting insulin, and then they just shovel carbs in, right? Like, I'm sure he does that. I'd be shocked if he didn't.
Right. In which case, my assessment of this boy as an imbecile doesn't cover it. Wow. Are you fucking serious?
It's a standard practice.
Again, does that make it optimal, right, or good?
No, of course not. But, you know, it is what it is.
While we're talking about it, attempting to build an unnaturally high degree of muscularity is not good for you.
Not at all.
It is not a healthy pursuit. If you want to do it, fine, fill your boots up, you do you. I've got no problem with people that do that, so long as they don't think what they're doing is improving their prospects for health long term, because you're fucking not.
That's one of the thing. I bring this up all the time. I'd say bodybuilding's not healthy. Like it can be really cool. You can think it's, dope and pursue it. But you see oftentimes like the words health and fitness, I think those are completely butchered at this point. They're just buzzwords. Yep. And even, you see some of the biggest guys talking about, oh, here's how to optimize your health. And it's like, I guess as much as you can, given your circumstance, Yeah.
All right. Tell us all about it, though, you health expert, Michael.
That is mostly reserved for people going ultra hard, like endurance sport, and oftentimes for more than...
Endurance sport, by its very definition, is not ultra hard. In terms of intensity, it's lower. It has to be. Mm-hmm. Has he never heard of critical power or critical velocity?
You could ask him.
Probably not. I could ask him if he wasn't too much of a pussy to actually front me for a debate.
Yeah, he never has he?
No.
A lot of people don't do that, though.
Well, there you go. All right, carry on, Mike.
An hour. So if you have a 45-minute lift, can you have some carbs and protein in your session? Yes. As a scientist, can I tell you it's making a big difference? No. It's just not enough time. Your pre-workout still has you totally covered. And now your intra-workout really just turns into your post-workout, because by the time you're done 45 minutes later, your intra-workout has just started to leach in. And so it's really a post-workout. But if you're doing an hour and a half of training, if you're doing 2 hours of training, hardcore stuff, if
you're training for 2 hours, that's not hardcore, because you cannot maintain high enough intensity to be truly optimally effective for 2 hours.
If you're going to be in the gym that long, you're probably taking pretty long rest periods.
That's right. You're sitting most of the time on a bench, probably looking at who looks good in spandex and sipping on water that you don't fucking need.
I'm not going to say I've never done it.
Neither. When I was younger and I used to do a lot of gym training, I used to do the same thing. Doesn't mean it's right.
Familiar with the endurance community, a part of the endurance community, long bike rides, long runs, these bring food with them. I know people that eat pizza crusts when
there's some literature that's now showing that like some of these endurance guys, I mean, their blood sugar is sitting, like they're cramming it. Their blood sugar is sitting between 150 and 180. Like they are pounding it. That is not healthy for the regular Joe Schmo.
It's not designed
or anybody else.
I noticed Thomas, he at least will splash up the study sometimes, doesn't he?
Well, I believe Thomas has a scientific advisor on his staff. However, having watched a number of Thomas's videos, I have said both publicly and privately to Thomas, what you need to do is fire whoever that person is. You need to fire them. They're an idiot.
Mm-hmm.
They're sending you up the garden path. They are singularly unscientific and unable to appropriately interpret science, and that person's making you look pretty stupid, Thomas. So,
yeah,
here we go.
He wants to be around 150 to 200 because of deciliter blood sugar. But that's what some of these top guys are doing. Like, I mean, they're just boom, and it's for that extra 1% that they want.
Exactly. Yeah. Cross the finish line in first versus fifth. Everyone's elite, but first gets a medal and fifth gets, I don't know, still drug tested and still banned.
Fifth doesn't get a ticket, Mike.
Well, hey, if fifth place had a better tan, if he had a better tan.
Exactly, yeah. And if one of the judging criteria was to have an abdomen that looks like a fucking basketball.
I tell you what, I'm very interested to see next time he competes, because he's never been below a legit 10% body fat. I really want to see, because you can see like the divots and like his upper hips where he got the removal.
Yeah.
But his stomach is still going to have, kind of that, I don't know, he might look like a Minecraft character.
Yeah. Or that character out of the Fantastic Four, whatever it is.
The Thing, right?
The Thing, yes. Yeah, right.
He kind of's already there, but yeah.
Yeah. Let's crack on.
How cycling works. So basically that intra-workout pays dividends. And really, it's just like a little bit of Gatorade and a little bit of whey protein can take you a really long way for intra-workout. So you don't have to be eating pizza crusts unless you
don't have to be doing anything at all nutrition-wise during, prior, or immediately after your exercise, in fact. Still.
Yeah, I don't think I'd be want to be having whey either.
No,
during the workout, no.
Oof.
But intra-workout, if your workout is an hour to 2 hours long, many
people
people
should not be still.
It's like a bottle of Gatorade and a scoop of whey protein and a lot of hydration can make a really big difference on the margins that you care about. If you care about the small differences, they become relatively big differences to you. And so that matters. So we have pre-workout, we have intra-workout, we have post-workout, and all the carbohydrate you eat there can be something like 50 to 60% of the carbohydrate you eat throughout the whole day. I mean, that's pre, intra, and post. You have maybe 3 other meals that you eat through the day or 2 other meals. Then for those meals, you just spread the carbohydrate roughly evenly. And I would say for many people, keep a lot of carbohydrate away from that last meal of the evening in most cases, because it'll give you so much energy that you might have trouble falling asleep and it'll create more digestive demand. So I would say ultimate carbohydrate replenishment strategies, pre, intra, post, then multiple meals have normal amount of slow digesting carbohydrate.
Okay, the optimal strategy for carbohydrate intake for everybody, including athletes, everybody including hardcore muscle building athletes, is still not 1 single gram per day ever, but don't change to that overnight. Transition to that sensibly.
He mentioned that there's going to be a lot of digestive stress. He said that, right, about a high carbohydrate meal. How are you going to get more energy if you're bogged down digesting carbs? Because I've experienced that myself. That would put you to sleep, wouldn't it?
Well, most likely, if you taking a bunch of carbs, depending on the particular GIGL of that, what you're going to get is an insulin response, and yes, that is going to make you feel less energized. We also need to understand that energy is a construct, by the way. The human body metabolism of living organisms does not function using energy. It functions by using mass and the interaction between various forms of mass. Mass being a form of energy, absolutely, but metabolism works on the form of energy that has physical existence, mass.
We'll have to talk about this another day because I know what you're talking about, but most people, you know what I mean? That's like advanced.
It's just thermodynamics, isn't it? It's just thermodynamics.
That's right.
Apparently. Right, okay. Great. Well, quote the first law of thermodynamics to me then. That's what I always say to people that say first law of thermodynamics. Like, great, quote it. Off you go.
You know what you're going to get.
Yeah. You're going to get a false statement around the conservation of mass. Which is a problem because, first of all, mass is not fucking conserved. So wrong. Secondly, the first law of thermodynamics doesn't have any words in it whatsoever, in fact. It is a mathematical statement, symbolic, you know? Mm-hmm. So if you don't, personally, you, the viewer, whoever you are, if you don't know the first law of thermodynamics and can't quote it to me, let alone apply it correctly, I would suggest that you keep your ignorant fucking opinion to yourself on that.
Oh, the comments they're gonna be correcting you as you know.
Of course.
We'll see if any of them will actually debate you about it though.
Of course they won't. And they think they're correcting me because all they're doing is regurgitating what some other mindless fucksplat told them. Oh, first law of thermodynamics, great, we'll quote it then. No, okay, we'll shut the fuck up. Mm-hmm. Yeah, anyway, okay.
Hydrates in them or whatever digestion speed. The last meal for the night, maybe a little bit more protein and a little bit less carbohydrate.
Okay, also the number of meals a person should eat per day, even if you're an athlete, is one. One meal, actually.
Oh, yeah. In this scene, we're eating 4, 5, 6, 7 meals a day, especially the biggest guys like Mike. Yeah, they eat every 2 hours. They have like a timer oftentimes.
Right. Ridiculous.
Because you're trying to bias your body into having amino acids to heal with through the night, but also eating a little bit less of carbs, which are the best macromolecule for energy. You don't.
No, they're not. That's false. Completely, utterly false.
Eat a lot of energy when you're going to sleep. So a little bit lower carb, calm you down a little bit. You go to sleep.
That's what you get with Mike Israetel, though. You get nothing but rancid, pustulous, excremental, ignorant Dunning-Kruger-based opinions based on totally false paradigms and a total lack of comprehension of basic physics and first principles.
You bring this up a lot too. I notice you say the brain fog. He's been saying the same thing like a few different ways now for like 3 minutes straight, it seems like.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Everything goes really well.
Okay. 2 things that you said that I want to kind of focus on a little bit. One is going to be the parasympathetic piece that I was very interested in that you said, but I want to come back to that one. First, glucose, carbs, pre or intra. Is there even a remote anti-catabolic effect? I should say remote. Is there an anti-catabolic effect to having those carbohydrates if you're already topped off on glycogen?
Yes.
Okay.
It's not very large, but it's there. And if you engage in very frequent, very hard training, it matters. CrossFitters, endurance athletes that train 4 hours a day, some of that training, you're probably going to want some protein.
That is totally, utterly, and completely contraindicated to train 4 hours a day. There is no justification for doing that whatsoever.
I have a hard time believing anybody some people are really hardcore that way, but even if you really enjoy lifting, because CrossFit's like a hybrid, that's like masochism, seemingly to me.
Just absolutely, totally contrary to what is good for a human being, short-term, medium-term, or long-term, actually. This kind of ultra-endurance stuff, just stay the hell away from that, kiddies. It's not your friend. Not at all. If you remember nothing else that I have ever said, remember this. Volume is not your friend. Intensity is. And to increase your volume, you necessarily have to reduce your intensity. It's a necessity. It should be really, really clear to anyone with any sense, therefore, that what I'm saying makes sense. But absolutely, jump on Revival Fitness channel and tell me I'm wrong and stuff. Or even better, front up to me face to face and let's have a debate about it, sunshine. If you know all about this, whoever you think you are, I'd welcome that.
I'll send you Bart's email. Yeah, he'll do it. You can schedule in.
Yep, no worries. All right, we're not going to get through this whole thing today because unfortunately we had some technical issues and we got started a bit later than we wanted to. Certainly, I'm willing to go through the whole thing with you or the rest of it or something else or whatever. Apologies, my bad on the technical stuff.
No,
it's just one of those things that happens.
I got you.
I think it's been a valuable discussion in as much as what people need to understand, if nothing else, is be more careful about who you listen to. Having letters after your name does not mean you know what you're talking about. The way to determine whether somebody knows what they're talking about is to, first of all, educate yourself as to basic first principles, basic physics that underpin our objective reality in which we all find ourselves. And if you do those things, you will find that my arguments are absolutely, completely unassailable. And if that doesn't work for you, once again, just take a look. Is this what you strive to? Because if you take this guy's advice, that's what you're going to get, I guess. Now, you might say the same thing to me. You might say, well, you don't have any muscle mass either. Well, I'm also in my mid-50s, and I have no desire to have excess muscle mass or to train excessively that would be required to achieve that. I've got plenty of house things going on. I'm running a farm and 3 businesses. I don't have time for that.
How old do you think Mike is, by the way, Bart? If you don't know, how old do you think he is?
Oh, look, I think he's about my age, maybe slightly younger. I don't know.
I believe he's 41.
Oh, Jesus, really?
And mind you, too, yeah, he's clean shaven here and he's got the good lighting and, the thumbnails, they AI them. They make him look all nice. But there's certain pictures, he looks quite old to me.
Yeah. Well, he looks older than I do, I think. That's why I thought he's maybe about my age, because I generally am told I look younger than my age.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, if that's right, there's another thing to point to, I suppose.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, look, thanks very much for joining me. Thanks for your input into that. Thanks for suggesting it. And let's do better next time on the time thing. It's just nuts. Like that. I've got one of those days today where I've got 8 contact hours pretty much end on end.
Sheesh, man.
I know I'm fabulously.
You're a rock star. You're a rock star.
Yeah. There it is. All right. So that being said, thanks for joining us. Join us next time when someone else will be wrong on the interwebs. And I really think we should probably have you on the channel on a live stream to do Q&A, perhaps.
Yeah.
I'll have my people talk to your people in the background about that. These are my people.
I get to talk to Edward Yellow. Cool.
Yes, man. You do. Lord Edward Yellow. He'll sort you out.
Sweet.
Yeah. Awesome. All right, man. Thanks for that.
Thank you.
And we'll see you next time around. Cheers.
Take care, man.
All right. Welcome back. Thanks for joining us once again on another day to finish off what we started the other day and couldn't get through. Good to see you once again. Wearing the same top. I didn't think to wear the same top today.
Well, continuity. We got to have the continuity,
Well, I think I've already given the game away that it's now a different day and we're back to finish. But there we go. Let's just carry on where we left off. And as usual, just do the sing out or whatever and let me know if you need me to pause if I haven't already done so. Yeah?
Yep. Let's do it.
Cool. Right. Mike, tell us all about it.
And if you engage in very frequent, very hard training, it matters. CrossFitters, endurance athletes that train 4 hours a day, some of that training, you're probably going to want some protein and carbohydrate there for the anti-catabolic effect. They have actually done an assessment of literature a little while.
They have done an assessment of literature.
What literature too? Yeah,
who's they and what literature?
I assume we're going to be in the dark with that. I doubt we're going to see anything. But
yes, I don't think he's going to give us who they is or what literature he's referring to. Yeah.
Also, he mentioned the anti-catabolic effect of protein and carbs. What do you think of that?
Well, I think it harps back to what we were saying, or I was saying the other day, which is actually the response to training is a response to a mild injury situation that you've imposed on yourself by training. Mm-hmm. So to ameliorate that, we'll call it distress on the body, does that improve the training response? Almost certainly not. Almost certainly the opposite. It allows a person perhaps to train again sooner and harder than they otherwise would be able to. It's better recovery, is what they're saying. Mm-hmm. However, the goal of the exercise for the sensible practitioner is the training response, not the ability to repeat the dose. Mm-hmm. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I believe Mike trains, I think he trains, last I checked, I think if I'm not mistaken, 6 days a week, and he pulls like 2-a-day workouts. So he'll do like AM, PM. Mind you, he doesn't train very intensely because you couldn't possibly in that scenario.
Exactly. That's exactly what my response would have been.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
You cannot train at the appropriate intensity for that period of time.
Right.
So what Mike is doing, if what you're saying is correct, and I have no reason to doubt you, then what he's doing is entirely suboptimal. I wonder if there's anything that would corroborate his entirely suboptimal approach to his training at all. I wonder.
Yeah, I mean, he's got muscle mass at least, but yeah, there's a number of things I think he could do better with his expertise, especially because people say, "Oh, his genetics aren't that great." Okay, sure. That said, the level of knowledge that he has or purports to have, I mean, I don't think you can ride the genetics excuse as long as people do for him. Do you agree?
I do. Yeah. Yeah. And, I'm glad that you're saying his purported knowledge, his purported expertise, because having listened to an amount of what this individual has had to say about a number of topics, my original assessment remains unchanged. This individual here is a fucking imbecile. He's an imbecile with Dunning-Kruger. Very serious Dunning-Kruger.
Yeah. Well, I like the fact that I can talk to you as well because, his credentials, they get flaunted a lot by people that defend him. They're like, "Oh, you're just a gym bro," or whoever else talks about him. So in the credentials department, if I'm not mistaken, you can go like bar for bar with him in terms of like the high level education. Right, so it's nice from that aspect too. You know what I mean?
That's a very good point, and it's something that I would like to pick up on. Yes, I do have great credentials. Yes, I do have a very significant academic curriculum vitae and experience behind me. Yes, I do have peer-reviewed publications. Yes, I have undertaken multi-million-dollar external consultancies with major organizations over the years. Yes, I do have credibility and credence behind me. However, that makes no difference whatsoever on any given day, on any given topic, as to whether what I have to say is right or wrong.
Right.
Or somewhere in between. Mm-hmm. All a person can do is to make an argument to the best of their ability and be prepared to listen to others who have something remotely valid to say, which may impact upon that opinion in terms of its veracity, correctness, utility in any given situation. What I'm saying to you is I've got all the bits of paper you would want. Mm-hmm. None of them mean a damn thing.
Right, on standalone.
In terms of standalone. In terms of on any given topic, at any given time, on any given day, what I have to say is either correct incorrect, or somewhere in between. Just like Mike Israetel. My assessment of what Mike has to say on a number of topics is that he's absolutely arse about face wrong, demonstrably, and I provide my reasoning.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes I do tap my credentials, but I do that to annoy people.
Oh, of course, yeah. I mean, I've heard that you apparently lie about those credentials too. I'm sure you've seen that, right?
Right. Well,
yeah.
Prove it.
Well, yeah.
Yeah. The thing is, a lot of people say I can't find much about Bart K online, about Bart K's background, Bart K's academic, whatever, Bart K's qualifications, whatever. Well, there's a reason for that.
What's the reason?
The reason for it is that's the way I like it. I had a 20-year or so career in academia that I'm now done with. And all of that stuff, an amount of it remains visible because it's public record. The things that are public record from an academic's history and background are things like peer-reviewed publications in the literature. Mm-hmm. Now, any given person on any given day with any searching skills whatsoever can go to the internet and find at least some of my peer-reviewed publications.
I've done it, yeah.
Right. So they're there. It's unequivocal. There's no doubt that I have done those things. I am the first primary author on a number of peer-reviewed research articles, review articles, letters, opinion pieces, etc., published in the literature, unequivocally. My certifications, specific qualifications, past employment history, etc., none of that is public record. That is nobody's business but mine.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody has the right to know that stuff about my past. Plus, it's kind of also, like it serves me, it's kind of like a controversy thing. Isn't this guy for real?
Yeah.
That serves me because people want to bring, and it garners views, it garners attention, whatever else. And then anyone that wants to face me for a debate on any given topic will then find out the full force of my scientific acumen and ability to make the arguments that I make in an unassailable fashion.
It's easy to be like, oh, this guy's just like some, quack who just talks about eating meat all day. But what was the one woman you just talked to? Victoria, was that her name?
Yeah, she calls herself, well, I call her Malnutrition by Victoria. She calls herself Nutrition by Victoria.
Yeah,
this is a woman who has been influenced by absolute cocksplats like Cole Robinson.
Oh, I saw Mark Bell's doing the sugar diet now.
He's doing that too. Yes, absolutely.
That's how he is. He jumped on keto years ago. Then he did carnivore. Now,
Yeah. Look, anybody that changes their tune every several months to suit a desire to get the maximum exposure online possible, the maximum number of views, etc. Okay. I was wrong before. Now I'm right. This time I'm right. The sugar diet is the answer. No, I said it was keto. I was wrong. Now it's the sugar diet. Well, as soon as anyone does that, your credibility is fucked. You're gone. You're finished. You're done.
Mm-hmm.
Paul salad, I don't know. Carnivore is the way to go. Oh, no, it isn't. Pour hundreds of grams of carbohydrates down your stupid fucking neck every day of your life.
Yeah.
Well, which one, Paul?
You
want to tell us you're credible? Which one?
I'm sure Paul realized it's much easier to get people to buy into fruit and honey and meat as opposed to just one of those things. You know what I mean?
Correct. And that's what Paul Saladino's driver is. In the same way that Cole Robinson is driven entirely by how many clicks he can get, etc. Whereas you look at someone like myself, the messages that I put forward are absolutely rock solid, consistent from the very first day I made myself a public figure in terms of as a social media influencer. I have not changed my tune, not one jot on anything.
Yeah, I've seen you for a few years now, maybe. Yeah, it's been pretty consistent the entire time. Yeah.
Exactly. Why? Because I was right the first time, and I'm still fucking right now.
Mm-hmm. Thomas DeLauer, he likes to do that too. He likes to hop around, from what I can tell.
Yeah, well, Thomas DeLauer has no training and background to speak of whatsoever. Thomas DeLauer has a so-called scientific advisor on his staff. I have no idea who it is, but what I can tell you is that they are utterly vacuous and incompetent as a scientific advisor. I've pointed that out both publicly on a video and also in a private discussion with Thomas on several occasions. You need to fire whoever that is, Thomas. I've told him. Will he take advice from me or anyone else? No. Thomas knows everything already, okay, because he's got millions of subscribers, ergo he must know everything. Oh, whatever. Yeah. So there it is, basically, in a nutshell. What I think people should ideally be looking for is someone who is absolutely consistent. Because as soon as I change my tune, I'm finished. Someone who is confident enough in their position to say, this is unassailable. These are facts. Hello. That's my entire stock. That and being sweary and abrasive.
Of course.
Which I have to keep doing now because I started doing it at the very beginning. I have toned it down, believe it or not, quite a bit as I've gone along. But if I stop doing it, people go, what the fuck's this?
Right.
So now I'm kind of typecast. Oh, well, whatever. But yeah, you want someone who is absolutely consistent, confident enough that they actually can go toe-to-toe with anybody in the world whatsoever. And I've made that challenge, I don't know how many times I've said, is there no one else? Are you not amused? You know, I have said I am open to debate anybody who thinks for 1 second they can get one over me. And a few people have tried, but these have generally been people who are so utterly destitute, so absolutely vacuous and suffering Dunning-Kruger, as our friend Mike does here, that they genuinely believed that they had a hope in hell of assailing me. Now, anyone that thinks they have a hope in hell of assailing me on the stuff that I'm expert in and the arguments that I have put together over multiple decades and had challenged by every single mindless fucking academic with credentials that's ever tried to assail me on it, it just blows my mind that people think they have a hope in hell. It's amusing to me. But anyway, that's a nice little segue. There's a nice little aside on my background. My background is what it is. In terms of the public record stuff, the peer-reviewed publications, you can all go and look those up for yourselves. And I did give you a bit of a hint earlier, and I'll make it explicit. When you search for publications written by an individual with my name, you will find a number of them. They do exist. What you will not find is everything that I personally have authored. Maybe not everything that's published in my name is in that name. Maybe I have more than one legal identity, boys and girls. Maybe there's a reason for that too.
That probably flies over some people's heads, but I know exactly what you mean, yeah.
Right. So maybe there's a reason for that too.
Well, maybe they'll figure it out. We'll see, but probably not.
Maybe they will, but what I can tell you is you will find a relatively significant list of publications in the name of 1BK in the areas of exercise physiology, nutrition, cardiovascular pathophysiology, and pure and applied statistical procedure and inference. You will find those if you look. Okay.
You won't find any for me, but yeah.
Right. Anyway, let's get on with what Mike has to say about being a cocksplat or something.
While back, and they noticed that endurance athletes hard training endurance athletes need significantly more protein than sedentary populations. And it was kind of surprised endurance athletes en masse because they were like, but we don't have big muscles. Who the hell needs that? We just need carbs, right? And endurance athletes are very good about worshiping carbs, as well as they should. Carbs for endurance.
And that's what I'm talking about with this absolute fucking imbecile. It's a half-truth. Yes, carbohydrates are required for muscular contraction. Carbohydrates are required for muscular contraction of all intensities, all of them. At every level of exercise intensity, there is not one single muscle contraction which is possible without glycogenolysis. That is the means by which all muscle fibers are fueled, for want of a better term.
Mm-hmm.
That does not mean any person, including an athlete, needs to consume a single gram of exogenous carbohydrates in their diet ever, not 1 gram.
That seems to be
gluconeogenesis is still a thing.
Seems to be a massive disconnect there. Like people immediately jump from A to B with that.
Right. Oh, right. We need carbohydrates to exercise, ergo you must eat carbohydrates.
Yep.
Nonsense. Your body is capable of manufacturing all the carbohydrate required.
It does
and
that
it will
from
do so according to your training status.
It does that from proteins and fats, correct?
Proteins, fats, and monocarboxylates such as lactate, for example.
Interesting.
Of course, there is a, for want of a better term, priority of what substrates will be used to generate glucose from non-glucose precursors. Example, a lot of people say, oh, gluconeogenesis is a problem because you'll eat your own muscle tissue.
Yeah.
Because gluconeogenesis uses protein, they say, which is true. It does. If there's no fucking fat left.
Right.
Because your body, the thing is, the human body has been evolving for at least 3,800 million fucking years. And in that time, it hasn't worked out that, well, the fat that's there that isn't part of our body structures, our hard-earned, our hard-fought gains, it's there for that purpose. Our bodies are so fucking inanely stupid that they'd rather eat our own muscles when there's fat sitting there that could be used for that purpose.
Yep.
Hello?
I talk about this as well. There's a common belief in like the general lifting community that if you like go on a cut, you start losing body fat, that you're guaranteed to lose some muscle, which that can happen eventually, but that's going to be very far down the line. Most people,
that's right. You're going to have to be
never going to get there. Right.
Right. You're going to have almost no fat left stored anywhere in your body before you're going to start eating your own muscle tissue, for God's sake.
Right. A legit bodybuilder might do that. The average guy cutting who wants to get to like 12, 13% roughly, I don't think that's going to happen.
Right. Good. Okay, Michael.
They need more protein than they thought they did, simply because it was able to present an anti-catabolic effect as you run or bike for 6 hours every day on average.
Which you should not do.
Right.
That is an unhealthy overtraining. Nobody should exercise at moderate intensity using large muscle mass, rhythmic muscle contractions, what they call long, slow distance aerobic or endurance training, for hours and hours and hours a day. Nobody in the world should do that. That is not a healthy pursuit. That's daft. And that's coming from an exercise physiologist first and foremost. All right?
That is a huge catabolic sink. If you eat a lot of protein, if you eat a lot of carbohydrate, that absolutely makes a difference. The good thing is most endurance athletes were already eating plenty of carbohydrate, but maybe they weren't eating a lot of protein. However, for other folks who are already eating plenty of protein, if they time their carbohydrates to their training, the anti-catabolic effect can be, again, very small, but over the course of 12 or 16 weeks of dieting, notable.
Yeah. Okay. And then the parasympathetic side, and I want to come back to another follow-up question on that, but before I forget in my feeble brain. So you said it creates sort of a sympathetic tone when you have carbohydrates post-workout. Does that umbrella outside of just like, hey, it's more optimal for anabolism and whatnot, does it actually sort of cue your body to, hey, get into recovery mode?
Yes.
So it's like a cortisol blunting effect? Or
huge cortisol blunting effect.
Right, so therefore it's a huge training effect, blunting thing to do, necessarily, because the training effect is the response to the distress reaction to the mild injury of the training.
So you think the better course of action would be to simply let the body take its course as it would normally without trying to do that intervention, basically?
I'm absolutely 100% certain of that. Yes.
Interesting.
In the same way that, like, people suggest if you have an acute muscle injury or, soft tissue injury, you should ice it. That is the absolute last thing you should do.
Yeah, I've heard that. It seems the mainstream sort of is catching on to that in recent years, but yeah, I grew up hearing that all the time.
Yeah. Look, I did years and years and years as a voluntary member of the St. John Ambulance Association as a amateur first aider. And, you know, it was always, you know, rest, ice, compression, elevation.
Yep.
Rest, ice, compression, elevation for injuries. No. By working against the body's natural reaction to the injury, the very thing that starts the healing process and gets the healing process kicked off and gets it happening, by attenuating that attempt of the body to do that, all you're doing is delaying the body getting any better. Sure, what it means is that you're able to get that athlete back on the paddock sooner, or if you're talking about what these guys are talking about with dietary intervention, to get you to recover more rapidly. All that allows you to do is go and exercise at the same intensity again sooner than you otherwise would, which is not the goal. Still, the goal is to get the fucking training response, for goodness sake.
So you would say this is essentially like a Band-Aid on a situation?
Yeah, and I would say it's essentially a very stupid thing to do.
Mm-hmm.
Because at the end of the day, I don't know any other way of saying it, so I'll repeat myself. The point of training is to slightly injure your body so that your body reacts to that slight injury by repairing itself slightly better than it was before you injured it, so that next time you do that to your body will be less injured by that. That's what getting fitter is.
Mm-hmm.
So by attenuating the injury process, by shortening the injury process, by lessening the effect of the injury process in terms of cortisol, lowered levels of substrates, etc., 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 you are attenuating the very training response, the thing that stimulates that training response. It's daft. I hope that's going up some flagpoles. Let's move on.
One of the most reliable ways to blunt cortisol is carbohydrate.
And ergo, dumb. Extremely dumb. Thanks, Michael, for showing us once again how fucking inane you are, Sunshine. How lacking in ability to actually critically evaluate something that you've probably read somewhere or seen somewhere that made sense to your feeble mind. Yeah.
Which is funny because somebody was various folks back in a few years back were saying, like, the anti-cortisol diet, and they'd say it's got to be low in carbs, and I'm like, what the? You guys got
insulin
totally
cortisol.
backwards.
Yeah.
Insulin, carbohydrates, blunt cortisol a ton, and that's kind of what you want to do. It's totally fine to have cortisol high while you're training, and as a matter of fact, it's just going to be a thing that hard training brings in lots of cortisol. I mean, it's stressful. There's no other way. You're doing hack squat for 5 plates for 6 sets of 15. There's some stress on you. Totally fine. Also, transient increases in cortisol don't predict anything except good results in the gym. Literally, it's how much cortisol.
If you say something is a matter of fact and suffix it or prefix it with literally, does it make any difference to what you've actually had to say in terms of its veracity, correctness, or utility?
Well, it's literally the most overused word in the English language.
It literally is. Yes, as a matter of fact.
Studies show.
Yes. Great. Cite them.
Well, hey, we've got about 8 minutes. I mean, maybe he'll give us one. Maybe. Okay, Michael. Wow us.
All you generate in a workout predicts how much gains you'll get from a workout better than testosterone changes. Because testosterone, if it goes up really fast and comes back down, doesn't really do much. Neither does cortisol. But people who have really high cortisol secretion during training, they're the ones that are going really hard. However, chronic exposures to high levels of cortisol are no bueno because they are catabolic in that not so nice way. And so both from a psychological perspective and physiological perspective, the cessation of a workout is optimally replaced with a time of recovery cycle.
Right. So what Michael is missing there is, ergo, in your training, what you ought to do is set your training intensity and volume at the level where you are producing the optimum level of cortisol for the optimum period of time that will precipitate the training response you're looking for. And the way to do that is to maximize your intensity and minimize your volume. Volume is still not your friend in training.
One of Mike's biggest calling cards, he may have changed on this over the years, but he had an old motto where essentially, you've heard of the term mesocycle, I'm sure.
Yeah.
He basically called for beginning, he called it minimum effective volume, right?
Yes.
It would be like 8 to 12 sets a week. Then it would go up to like 10 to 14 and then 16 to 20. And then it would go up over a period of 4 weeks or so. Then you deload, drop it all back down. Then you repeat. At least that was his old model. I don't know how much he's adjusted that.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. My take on all of this has always been that having your training cyclically arranged in mesocycles, microcycles, all sorts of, bits and bobs and all of this is not indicated, is not sensible. There's no point in that, because at the end of the day, what you ought to do to get a training response is the same any given day of the week, and that is to train at maximal intensity or minimal exposure time, minimal volume, minimum effective exposure at all times. Mm-hmm. Volume is not your friend still.
There's a new sect in the whole kind of lifting world. They are more in tune with what you've been saying. Mike Menser is most famous for that, I would say. Which he's been dead for a number of years now, but he always kind of comes back into popularity. But he was, bodybuilding conventionally, so just volume out the wazoo every single day. Yeah. So we might be trending back closer to something like you've been saying, or at least a segment of the industry is so.
Okay, and it's interesting that the industry itself tends to wax and wane and trend and whatever else. And let's get back to what I said before. I don't. Mm-hmm. My advice, my opinions, what I have to say does not change from month to month or year to year. Oh, you're just not open to new data. Yes, I am. Show me some. Mm-hmm. Anybody, show me some data that's valid or of utility in any way that would change my opinion on this. There's a challenge for you, boys and girls, ladies and gentlemen, super intelligent shades of the color sky blue pink. However you identify.
Comment them down below. We can go over them at some point, sure.
Awesome. Right, let's crack on so that we don't run out of time again.
I know, man. Jeez.
And physiological recovery. And carbs bring in both. You have a big bowl of cereal with some protein after training. It's this woo-saw effect. You're psychologically more relaxed. You're physiologically, your parasympathetic activity is up, sympathetic is down.
Ergo, your training response is blunted, almost certainly. I think we've covered that, though, haven't we?
Yeah.
What a douche this guy is. What an absolute fuck knuckle.
That's what he does after his workout, too. He has a big bowl of cereal, and then he has a big protein shake.
Yeah. Well, it shows, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does.
Because, again... Anyway.
Opposite of fight or flight. Someone just reshared a quote of mine on Instagram that I must have said at some point, but it was like the best thing you can do after workout is go home, sit down, have a bunch of food and chill the out. That's what you do for recovery. And you've been around for a long time. People do for recovery all kinds of wacky stuff. They'd be like, so is treadmill running at a light pace good for recovery? But
no, it isn't.
Only if it replaces a hard run. But if you're putting it extra on top, that's just more stress.
So you do get it, Mike. Volume is not your friend.
He's coming around, Bart. He's coming around. He might be.
I don't think he does get it, though. Well, I know he doesn't get it.
So carbohydrates post-workout absolutely do bring in a parasympathetic response. They help with it. And that response is critical psychologically and physiologically for giving you the best results.
Rubbish.
And recovering you quick enough.
Again, let's have a look at some data that would underpin that assertion, shall we? Any day of the week. Anyone that wants to bring any data to me and wants to debate data or science or its flaws, foibles, capabilities, or lack thereof, please do come and try and debate me. Have a go. Have a crack, you guys that know everything about this or think you do. Any day of the week. There you go. Open challenge. Just email me. Simple. We'll set it up. We'll do it live on camera. It'll get great viewer numbers.
I'll promote it. Yeah, it'll be great.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah. I mean, literally, as a matter of fact, I'm open to debate anybody on pretty much any topic that I know anything about. As a matter of fact, literally.
So that tomorrow or later that day when you train again, you'll have the most gusto that you can manage.
Right. So the ability to train hard again the next day is the goal in terms of what Michael's thinking here. Well, it still fucking isn't. No, because the exercise is the thing that's supposed to precipitate the training response. And if you attenuate the training response in order to facilitate repeating the insult, then you, my friend, are a fucking imbecile.
Guilty as charged.
Yep. Mike Israetel. We still call him Mike.
Yeah, you could get that going, yeah.
Yeah, Mike Imbecile. Mike is a fucking imbecile, is what I'm saying. He's an absolute waste of fucking oxygen. He really is. He's got nothing of any value to add whatsoever. He's an arrogant cocksplat. He's a shithook of the highest order. I really, really find this particular prick offensive. He's not the only one. I find a lot of people offensive, Mike.
Yeah, that's true.
Perhaps I should sit down on a couch with someone and go over my issues. Maybe. That's for another day, though.
I found, when I was even strict keto for 5 or 6 years, I would train still at the same relative level of intensity, sure, and I would end up just chronically stressed, right?
Yes.
Until I found that, well, hey, I could still have 50 grams of glucose after my workout and be back in ketosis in no time. And
so when did being in ketosis become the goal?
Bart, you're the first person I ever really heard talk about this, because everybody thinks that the keto diet is about being in ketosis 24/7.
Right, which it is not. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Dear oh dear. I've covered that in great detail on my channel on multiple occasions, so we won't bore people again with it today, especially considering the time. But if people want to know why I'm saying that, binge watch everything on my channel. And then share it to your socials. Make comments under it, and do all the things that make the algorithm make my videos stand out. Basically, because Al Gore and his rhythms aren't helping me on the YouTubes. I'm persona non grata over there on the YouTubes.
Oh man, we can talk about that later.
Yeah, right. Okay, let's get through this.
Relax. I feel like I wasn't in this sympathetic tone all day. It was like I was impossible to click out of it. It was like
so you felt it.
Oh, absolutely. I'm super in tune with that. I could feel that for sure. And it would impact sleep, and then it would steamroll. You see a lot of people that are on, low carb or keto, like they end up. And then, I don't want to
end up what, Thomas? What do they end up, these people on low carb or keto? You see how he started a sentence and he says, a lot of people on low carb or keto end up, and then he stopped completely and changed topics to, what, Thomas? No? Okay.
Digress too much into that. But then there's a very fine line between being in ketosis and being low carb. I call low carb almost metabolic purgatory. You're like sitting in this state where you're not producing ketones yet, so you're not getting that benefit. You're just in this area.
You just feel like totally.
Yeah. And it's like a lot of people, they put themselves there because they're not going all the way. They're just like, oh, low carb, carbs are bad, but they're not actually committing all the way.
Totally. There's something to be said for some people. You either just go into full keto or just do a normal diet.
Yep.
Low carb at the boundary layer of the bottom of that can feel not so great because your body's like always in that transition.
What am I doing?
The first week of keto typically sucks because you're in that transition the whole time. Some people stretch out an 8-week keto diet and be in that transition all 8 weeks. And they're like, keto sucks. And you're like, yeah, you were never in keto though, but no big deal.
You never really were in keto. You did it wrong.
Right.
Okay, good.
Yeah, no, exactly. And it's like you're filling up your
Also, while we're on this, people say the carnivore diet is the most extreme keto diet imaginable. Absolute fucking nonsense. A properly put together carnivore diet will almost certainly have you most of the time without any detectable ketones to speak of. You will not be at a high level of ketosis. Why not? Well, because if you're eating a properly designed carnivore diet, you'll be eating too much protein for that. Okay? So these idiots that say, oh, it's extreme ketogenic diet. No, it fucking isn't. No. I hope that's clear.
glycogen reserves for
Just enough.
maybe 50 or 75 grams. So then you're burning through it in 30 minminutes of your workout, and then you're transitioning. Why am I bonking 30 minutes?
Weird. It's like you engineered that.
So, and then if we kind of come back to the, the insulin being sort of parasympathetic, things like that. If you are trying to optimize sleep, along with kind of using these carbohydrates for timing, like on one hand, you have some people that say, so you can't sleep without eating carbohydrates. Is that what we're saying now?
I guess you can't sleep optimally, whatever that deep REM maybe. I don't know.
Well, shit, I'm in trouble then, because I've consumed very few carbohydrates to speak of for something like 12 years now.
You're wide awake all the time?
Well, I tend to sleep 10 and 11 hours a day.
Well, you must need that because, ketosis is so stressful, right? And
that's right. Even though my level of ketones is almost zero pretty much all the time.
Gluconeogenesis is so stressful. That's why you sleep so much, Bart. See, we cracked the code. We cracked the code.
There we go. Good. We cracked the bro code maybe, but nothing that we've just said is remotely backed by any kind of science. We were just being, for those that didn't actually get the sarcasm, we were just being very sarcastic then, boys and girls.
Yeah, you got to explain it too. Isn't that terrible?
God. And the other thing that always amazes me is people on social media in written format, like on the X platform, making sarcastic comments. You do know that sarcasm usually only comes across with a tone of voice and a look in the face and some body language. You get that sarcasm in writing often falls completely flat, doesn't work. No. Okay. Anyway, right, Thomas.
You have carbohydrates, you get this, hypoglycemic dip later on, and then it can actually improve sleep onset. And then there's literature that shows it improves onset, but it actually messes you up later on.
Literature shows.
Yeah,
is there an optimal time to time carbohydrates for sleep?
Yes, but it's different based on your dieting phase and what the glycogen and total fuel situation is. If you're in a hypocaloric diet, you're always
hypocaloric diet. A calorie-restricted diet, says Mike. Here we go again, Michael, with your fucking ignorance of basic physics, first principles of the universe as we understand them. Calories are heat energy and nothing else. Defined as such, measured as such, they are manifest in our objective reality as excitations of the electromagnetic field. The electromagnetic field has a rest mass of 0, meaning necessarily, according to the laws of physics, that they can not be brought to rest in any inertial frame. The exact number of calories that a human being can possibly consume is not one ever. 0, none.
Something I like to do, because people, I kind of bring this up here and there on my channel, because my audience broadly, this is over their head right now. Yeah. But they'll say, well, how could you possibly gain weight without a calorie surplus? I'll say, well, how much does a calorie weigh?
Exactly.
Eventually you'll get them to say 0, and then I'll be like, well, how's it affect your weight then? And then goes in circles for 30 minutes. Yeah,
right, because it's just thermodynamics, isn't it? Thermodynamics. Great. As I think I said the other day when we started this, quote the first law of thermodynamics for me, Mr. Jim Bro, whoever you might be.
If I remember,
not you, Matthew. I'm not talking to you specifically, Matthew. I'm talking to the viewer.
I know, but delta Q equals U minus W, right?
Fucking fantastic! Yeah,
I remember.
The Jim Bro that can actually quote the thing.
I passed. Right. Hell yeah.
So which one of those mathematical operators in that mathematical sum, being the first law of thermodynamics that you just correctly quoted, which one of those refers to mass?
I don't believe any of them do.
You're correct. Not one of them does. It's explicitly excluded from the formulation. Ergo, the first law of thermodynamics necessarily refers to a closed thermodynamic system, i.e. one that can not exchange mass in or out. The only exchange possible in a closed thermodynamic system is the exchange of pure energy, not mass. It does not apply to metabolism. So anyone that says, thermodynamics, though, does not understand what the first law of thermodynamics is or what it says. And they should be treated with the same level of disdain as a flat earther.
It took me probably a year or so, because I heard you talk about this a while ago, and I kind of conceptually got it, but it probably took me a full year to fully grasp it, because it's very hard once you come out of the mainstream kind of headspace. You know what I mean? But it's possible. Yeah.
So look, if a person without any credentials to speak of in terms of physics and higher education and all of that can get this, you can get it too, dear viewer, whoever you might be. Stick around long enough and maybe have an open mind and drop your preconceptions, and maybe that'll help. Anyway, let's get this done, because, geez, we're running out of time again.
No, we're terrible.
Less than is by definition what you're trying to do. Consuming a considerable bolus of carbohydrate, at least a decent...
See the word may there? May. That leaves maybe not two entirely on the table, and there's nothing in that statement that tells us whether it's may or maybe not. It's most likely. It's a great word you can use to make yourself safe. Maybe this is the case, so maybe not too. Great.
Decent one in the meal before you go to sleep, an hour, 2 hours before sleep, can significantly...
Can. It's the same as may. Maybe and can. Okay. Maybe not too, and maybe cannot.
Put you in a parasympathetic state that you're not normally able to be in during the day because you're always hypocaloric. No calories at all, ever, still. Being hypocaloric is the opposite of parasympathetic because your body...
No, it isn't, because the exact number of calories taken in by any human being at any time is exactly the same at all times, and it's zero still.
How am I supposed to recover? There's not enough food around. What the hell? And so...
There we go.
The last meal of the day being higher in carbs, in that context, for many people, probably most, would work as a net enhancer of sleep ability.
Probably. That's like maybe and can, isn't it? Probably is a more assertive statement because it suggests that what you're saying is likely to be correct, to which I would say, great, Michael, can you cite anything that backs that up? And he won't be able to.
No.
Okay, good.
It puts you to sleep, and then you don't have trouble staying in sleep. If you're eating a normal diet where you're not trying to lose weight, even trying to gain weight, carbohydrates before sleep can just give you too much energy and give you the carb sweats. And
energy is a construct. It's an idea. It's that thing that we have to evoke to form some kind of farcical understanding of the objective reality that we observe as participants in space-time. It's not a real thing. The real thing is that which we can objectively measure. When you measure like calories, for example, you're measuring a proxy of a thing that we're calling heat energy. You're not actually measuring heat. What you're measuring is mechanical vibration, rotation, and translocation of the molecules of a given body.
And those cannot be linearly equated to metabolic energy because we don't run on heat.
That's right. If we could run on heat, then we wouldn't need food. We could just sit in the sun. And we can't do that. So there we go. There's the end of that. All right. Let's go.
And you wake up soaking your sheets. Heart rate. Yeah. What am I doing? Yeah. Well, you're digesting food. You ate a lot of food. So there you want to keep the food volume low altogether. And you want enough protein to supply your body with that recovery fuel through the night. So you end up eating a higher protein, lower carb, lower fat meal in the evening if you're eating relatively normally, not trying to lose fat. So in a fat loss diet, experiment with having some more carbs in the evening.
No, don't do that. That's a fucking stupid thing to do. You do not require any carbohydrates in your diet at any time, not 1 gram ever, still.
Non-fat loss diet, try it. But if you see like, this isn't great, just have a mostly protein and fat, mostly protein of that meal before you go to bed, a few hours before you go to bed. Make sure that when you're going to bed, you're not feeling like, that feeling you just went to a Brazilian steakhouse and you're going to explode. Get that to go down a little. Then you go to sleep. It's going to work out a lot better.
Yeah. I like
this mic is all about how not to have a big fat guts, please. Still. Fuck me. Are we serious? Is this bullhead self-awareness really that limited?
Well, I mean, he may know from experience, if nothing else, right? So
yeah, please tell us how not to be a fatty, or at least bloated, because it's probably not fat mostly. It's bloating that we're seeing on that shot. Yeah.
Little like low-fat cottage cheese and some pineapple or something for me is like, I feel really good. Just enough, I don't know. Just like if I start going above like 40, 50 grams of carbohydrates after like 5 p.m., it's just problematic for me for some reason.
Your body gets you into, hey, I've got energy. Let's go use this mode. And then you're just not very conducive to sleep.
So then last question on the side of the muscle building piece. Obviously, protein is going to be the priority, of course. But does combining protein and carbohydrates really do anything in that moment together for muscle anabolism, or is it really the protein driving the biggest change?
So I think it's a combination of the protein and carbs. And
what do you think wrong?
This is something you can't get out of literature on anabolism.
Good.
By itself, because you need to look at the catabolic side of the equation. Muscle growth happens over time if you reduce catabolism to some extent and you increase anabolism. They've shown time and time again.
Who's they? They've shown time and time again. Who is they, Michael?
It's not Mike and all his colleagues do this. It's endless with just the vagueness all the time.
Yes. Studies show, they've shown, experts agree that.
Yep.
The best evidence indicates. Great. How about you fucking cite it?
What always fascinates me with Mike is that his Thomas even, these guys have huge channels. They have editors. Could they not even just like pop something up just to give you like an idea, something you could actually just look at?
Yes, they could. And some of these influences on both sides of the theological divide here tend to do that from time to time. I also have a problem with that though too, Matthew.
Oh yeah, that's a I know.
Flashing up something on the screen and saying, look, this proves my point, and then ripping it back down again.
Right.
When what you've actually seen is often a screenshot of the front page of a paper for a few seconds.
They'll highlight a little out of context.
Yeah, that too. No, I've got a problem with that too. That's not doing science. If you want to bring some science to the table, then we should do a video where we sit down and we go through the thing with a fine-tooth comb and we talk about everything that's wrong with it.
Genuinely, nobody does that except you from what I've seen.
Correct. Mostly because the skills to do so are absent.
Yep. I like when I've seen the ones you do about Paul Saladino when he can't even read what's on the paper in front of him and you're just correcting him for 30 minutes. It's eye-opening.
Yeah, it is, but it's also damn frustrating for me to have to do.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Especially considering the numbers of viewers that these absolute imbeciles, these buffheads, these ill-trained, ill-educated, Dunning-Kruger suffering members of the arrogant society who think they, because they can read words on a page, they think that means that they are competent to actually understand what's being said in the paper or how to critically analyze. It's just fucking ridiculous.
Yeah.
I mean, the analogy I've often used is this. If I burst a pipe in my house, I'm going to call a plumber. I'm going to ask a plumber about it. I'm not going to call an electrician for that. Paul Salad, I don't know, is an MD/psychiatrist who, by the way, hasn't practiced not one single day in his life in either field. Mm-hmm. He just did the qualifications and went straight to being a social media influencer. I mean, him trying to say that he's competent to read and talk about what science says is akin to me saying, well, look, I'm the president of the Amateur Gynecology Society. No experience, Matthew, but I'll take a look at it for you. It's fucking ridiculous.
Yeah.
It's absolutely fucking ridiculous. And I wish it would stop. I really do. But anyway, we are going to run out of time if we don't get on with it. Let's go.
That injectable insulin doesn't really promote a whole lot of net anabolism, but it's a very powerful anti-catabolic driver. And any pro bodybuilder will tell you that injectable insulin is insanely anabolic. And
it's also insanely pro-inflammatory. And you should do no such thing under any circumstances ever if you value your lifespan. Never, ever, ever should you inject insulin unless you are a type 1 diabetic. Mm-hmm. Ever.
I mentioned that when we first recorded. I told, yeah.
Whew. Wow. But the thing, of course, is that people who move in the fraternity, for one a bit of a term, of hypertrophy athletes and bodybuilding and all of those people, the body beautiful industry, all of that. They actually don't give two shits, most of them, about their lifespan.
No.
Which is a very sad thing to have to say, but it's true. This is not an industry based in health. This is an industry based in, I think, psychological unwellness, actually.
I could write a whole paper about that, man. But yeah, I
Please do.
agree. I might.
All right, let's get this done.
Sense over the long term, it potentiates a lot of muscle growth, but it doesn't seem to do that much by growing extra muscle. It seems to do by saving extra muscle. So
speculation.
If you have just protein, let's say I just feed 50 grams of protein, some of that protein will
sitting there burping and
he does this all the time. Mm-hmm. He's always
oh god, I'm unwell. Maybe it's because you don't know what you're fucking talking about, Michael. And what you're doing to yourself is causing these problems. Did it ever go up his flagpole at all? Does he even think for a second, hang on, maybe I should shut the fuck up here? No.
Probably not.
We'll go into getting anabolism started. Some will just be burned off for energy.
You don't burn off anything. That's not what happens in the human body, in fact.
If I throw in a 30-gram Gatorade shake into that meal, now it's 80 grams total nutrient. The carbohydrates are so anti-catabolic, so parasympathetic, they shuttle all that in. And you have the remaining all of that 50 grams of protein to go into the muscle machinery. So if you compare them the right way.
And now what he's now implying is that if you don't eat enough carbohydrates, what's going to happen is your body's going to break down all that protein you've just eaten for energy and you won't be able to build muscle mass. Absolute fucking nonsense. The primary source of energy in the absence of carbohydrates is fat, not fucking protein. Still. For God's sake. Why would anyone listen to this fucking buffhead other than he's got 3 letters after his name that seems to make people believe that he knows what he's talking about?
His personality seems to be attractive to certain people. I don't know if it's the endless gay jokes.
Maybe.
What exactly it is. You know about those. Yeah, he hasn't made any to Thomas, though. I'm kind of surprised. Maybe he's on his best behavior today.
Yeah. Or maybe he actually fancies Thomas and doesn't want to.
He doesn't want to blow it in front of him.
Maybe he doesn't want to blow him. I don't know. Okay, we're devolving. Let's get on with this.
Carbs can be a huge we'll take care of this part thing for you so that all the protein you're eating go to the right spot. Can you overcome that by eating just way more protein? Sure. But then, why are you going out of your way to get rid of a nutrient that's already tailor-made for this exact purpose?
Yeah.
So there is a synergistic effect of protein and carbs, and that increased bolus of carbohydrate will have those anti-catabolic
The same is true of protein and fat, because you see, Michael, that's what human beings have been consuming almost entirely without any carbohydrates to speak of at all for something like 4.5 million fucking years. Carbohydrates have only been added to the human diet in any significant amount whatsoever in the last 11 or 12,000 years. And it's the second worst thing we ever did. Dietarily. The worst thing we ever did was to add seed oils.
I don't know if you know this. Mike is a seed oils are fine guy.
Oh, Jesus Christ. It doesn't surprise me. It really doesn't.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay, anyone that listened to Mike Israetel on any topic whatsoever prior to watching this discussion, if you're not convinced yet, there it is right there. He thinks seed oils are okay to eat. Wow.
Parasympathetic increasing effects that protein alone might not have. So if I was
see how that's one of those maybe, could be, possibly words. Might. You might be wrong too, Mike. And I would suggest you are.
Gambling man, I'd bet that a mixed diet of carbs plus protein, even calorie equated, doesn't.
You can't equate calories, because the amount of calories still that you can consume still is none, irrespective of what mass of food you eat and its makeup. The exact number of calories will still be exactly fucking zero still. I hope this is clear. Whether you like it or not, Gym Bunnies, Gym Bros, it's still a fact. It's still a basic fact of basic physics. It's the first principle of the universe as we understand it, according to the known laws of physics as we sit here speaking about them on my date, the 14th of May, 2025. at 12:57 p.m. Okay? I'm still right until proven otherwise on that. All right?
Better for long-term muscle gain than a diet of almost exclusively protein.
I can see that.
And
who eats a diet of almost exclusively protein, for fuck's sake?
Yeah, it's kind of odd.
Who does that?
Maybe bodybuilders right before a show, if they're doing like a protein sparing fast out of like, okay, strip everything as much as we possibly can. That's about it.
Okay. Well, don't. is my suggestion to that. Don't be involved in those kind of competitions. Don't do that. Don't do the prep for those competitions, because you're not going to be doing those competitions, because it's all fucking daft. All of it. It's dumb. Stupid.
In the literature,
cheaper too.
It's cheaper. It's more fun. You can eat it more places. It's just all upsides unless you're psychotically driven to consume a ton of protein and nothing else. And then I don't really know what to say, because like, rock on.
But it's almost like the best way, if what I'm gathering from this, correct me if I'm wrong, it's like in general protein consumption, it's like, okay, it's always going to be a 2 steps forward, 1 step back, because it's a balance of muscle protein breakdown and synthesis, right? It's 2 steps forward, you eat the protein, but then you have that 1 step back because you're still going to have breakdown. It's like you almost, when you have some carbs along with your protein, you're almost making it more like 2 steps forward, half step back.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think so. And they potentiate your training, and they help your sleep, and they improve your mood. They're excellent for cognition. Again, carbohydrates are the preferred fuel source of the brain.
Absolute fucking nonsense. The brain has no preference for fuel source. It has a limit to the number of fuel sources that it can possibly use. And because of that, it has all the metabolic machinery to make sure that it has enough of those fuel sources at all times. And it does that. That's why we've survived basically as a species for, well, our entirety, and why we continue to survive as a species. Right.
All those benefits together. Keto is dope if you have a compelling reason to do it. But if you don't have a compelling reason to do keto or low carb, consider some adequate carbohydrate, because
which is still not 1 single gram ever. Still,
it has some really good effects.
No, it doesn't. Still,
I like your approach on that, because you don't demonize the keto.
Okay, because we're out of time, we'll stop there. Look, there's only a few minutes left. They're summing up. I think it's been quite clear. The take-home message is Thomas Stilauer doesn't know what he's doing whatsoever. We've known that for a long time anyway. Mike Israetel is an absolute imbecile. He's a cocksplat. He's a shit hook. He's a complete waste of oxygen. He doesn't know what he's talking about whatsoever. He doesn't have the first clue. Matthew, it's been an absolute pleasure to go through all of this stuff with you, and we will hook up again very, very soon. Thank you for being here and playing the game. I've got a race because I've got my next appointment. I'm very popular, very, very popular. So we will catch up very, very soon when I send you this recording so that you can put it up on your channel as well. Sweet. In the meantime, for the viewers, thank you for being here. Thanks for sitting through all of that. Join us next time when someone will be wrong on interwebs, because it doesn't look like slowing down anytime soon, does it? No. All right. Ciao for now.